to just 2 weeks prior and say you have this amount of time, get ready, sort your things out, sort your accommodation out, sort your family out, sort your kids out, you're going for Hajj. Subhanallah. We welcome to the studio today Noor Jahan Khan from Hajj 1444 2023. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah. You're here with a very important responsibility. You're going to take us for Hajj today in a few minutes that we have with you. When you hear this labbaik again, how does that make you? I know how it makes me feel, and I haven't been on Hajj as an adult yet. But how does that? What memories come to your face? Remember heart first.
I think your heart starts to pound and takes you right back to everything. There's no one moment that stands out because from the time that you are invited, called, or accredited, the hairs on your body start to stand because there's just so much that you look forward to, that you expect, that you don't expect. It's an emotional whirlwind, but it's definitely something to make your heart yearn, to be back there.
I can imagine. So tell me, how did it happen that only 2 weeks before the time you were accredited? Tell us about that.
So, when anybody asks me to describe Hajj and my experience, I say that it's surreal because I knew, I felt like I was going for Hajj even before Hajj season. I would tell everyone, my family members, I would sit with my mother, and say, no, I'm going for Hajj this year. And she'd think, but it's no one's the list hasn't been out yet. How do you know? And I kept saying, I'm going for Hajj. And then when the list had come out, my name wasn't on it. So, you're disheartened, but you understand that there's a plan, and it's all part of the plan. And then somebody told us there's this ready to go list that had come out finally. So we put our names down and weeks had gone by, literally weeks, and there was no news. So I called Sahuk and I said, listen, am I on this list or not? And the agent said, listen, if you haven't received anything, any contact from us by now, you're probably not on that list. So disheartened and sad and every other word to describe that emotion, I said to my husband, let's just take the kids on holiday. And so we did that. We left the country, we got back, and the Friday that we returned, we got the SMS we accredited. So now we have just over 2.5 weeks to prepare. So I said to everyone, I told you I was going for Hajj, But at that point, in hindsight, I must tell you that at that point, I felt like, I feel robbed because I didn't attend any of the talks and everything that prepared the Hujjaj for Hajj that
mental preparation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything else fell into place, and we'll get into that. But I felt like I wasn't prepared, and I was robbed of all the talks mostly because you need, as much as you've read the literature and you've been to madrasa and you know the process and the protocol, it's just those seminars that you think is such an integral part. But I must be honest that when we eventually arrived in Medina, the ulama did talks with us. Okay. And that was the preparation that we needed. And I must say for the listeners and for the Hujjaj of this year, if you feel like, you don't have work doesn't permit, or you don't have the means to attend one of the talks or transportation, whatever the case is, don't feel robbed. There was one vital thing that Maulana Banker had said in one of the initial talks that he gave us when we landed in Medina. He said, if you go in with a negative perspective on Hajj, then everything you're going to do is going to be negative. It's going to be an uphill battle. But if you go in with a positive perspective and knowing that Allah has invited you and Allah will take care of everything, it will go smoothly. And that is exactly how it happened. And I have a private practice. So 2.5 weeks to change everything. And I have 2 small kids, But alhamdulillah, Allah provides and Allah takes care of it.
Like you mentioned now, the mental preparation, but now in all practicality, you mentioned now you've got these 2 small kids. Yeah. You now have a private practice, which you now have to close. And that goes for appointments and whatever else you may have. Your kids, who will your kids go to? Those are the first thoughts that go to your mind. But it was very clever to put yourself on a ready-to-go list. It's something that it basically means you're financially ready, or you are capable of going for Hajj, I'm assuming. What are some of the first things that you then did? Because at this point, you hadn't purchased ihram.
Nothing.
No hotels booked or anything.
Nothing. Okay, so with regard to logistics,
right.
I'm not Even when you invited me on the show, I had like, why does someone want to talk to you? You didn't plan anything.
We should have spoken to him.
I was not actually should have spoken to him. But he's very
We shall
well
call him.
researched. He's very well researched. So even though we weren't going for Hajj, he's very familiar with the agencies and things like that.
Right.
So he knew it was either TTW or World of Travel.
Okay.
And I'm not here to promote anyone. There's no marketing behind this. But logistically, we went and we met Irshad Malik, and there was nothing else we had to do. He appointed an agent, Arif, and he was brilliant. We worked, so he would talk to us after hours. There was really nothing we had to do from a logistics perspective. In terms of hotels, okay, I wanted certain hotels, but I
Yeah.
mean, you only have 2.5 weeks, everything booked.
Yeah.
But they advised us, listen, go this way, and I promise you're going to be okay. People have reservations about Azizia. And although it's different from what you're used to in Makkah and Medina, but I had peace in Azizia. There was an overwhelming sense of peace, even though it's not as lovely as you expecting it to be or whatever the case.
But it's perfectly comfortable. We stayed there doing
Totally
Umrah.
comfortable. It was probably, if I could say, one of the best experiences of my life because you've just finished you in preparation for the 5 days of Hajj now. And it's all these emotions, and then you're in your little room and your hotel is very little. We stayed in something called Azizia Executive, and you start to meet other Hujjaj. Because in Makkah and Medina, you don't really know anyone. Maybe you're with your little clique or your family. I had my sister and my brother who did Hajj with us as well. But once you're there in Azizia, your the bonds are created. The sisterhood and the brotherhood, and those are the memories that you really cherish.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. So take us through now where once you're there, you now somehow you just embrace it. That feeling just comes over you. You're there now and you forget everything else. All else slips away. You are now on the road to Hajj. What are some of the most essential things that you really appreciated in that time that really helped you? Was it maybe, like you said, the ulama were there to guide you along the way as well and to prepare for those 5 days? Was it maybe a travel pack, or many people are talking about their backpacks that they lived by, they never let go of? Was it something, maybe a burqa that you enjoyed? Somebody gave you a gift? What are some of the most helpful things that really helped over that course of life?
Okay, so in terms of like getting ready, people had, I didn't really spend a lot to prepare. In your talk last week, you said that when the Hujjaj are leaving, you should, offer your help and the blessings come to you as well. And that's exactly what happened with us. Family members, patients, colleagues, our bags are full of things that we never bought. My ikram came from one of my aunties in Dubai. I wasn't thinking of that, but I thought I need to manage the practice, manage the kids. Alhamdulillah, I have an excellent support system with my parents. So that wasn't a concern. But getting ready for Hajj and one of the intentions I had made years ago, you don't really think about these things. It wasn't a dua, but in my heart I said, if I was going, if I had the opportunity to do Hajj, I would want it to be led by Maulana Banker. And the ulama that we had in our group was Maulana Banker, Maulana Olga, Hafiz Khatib. They were brilliant. If you have no knowledge of Hajj, don't be alarmed or nervous because they literally walked you through every step of the way. We did walking to Arafat that was led by Maulana Olga. And if there's one memory or one thing that stands with me, and I keep going back to, is as we were walking, he said to us, you're walking towards the plains of Arafat. Feel the Malaika embrace you.
Wow.
You stop and you have goosebumps because you're not, are you really
This
that
is
special
Arafat,
that a
that's your
Malaika is
Hajj.
going to embrace you? And he said they're in your presence because they too are walking towards Arafat.
Wow.
And it was incredible. So it's like, and we didn't plan to do a walking Hajj. It was, I mentally or physically rather, we were prepared, we could do it. Mentally, we were like, no, I want to be well rested. My husband was convinced the night before that we're going to walk. So we walked and, it worked out. Allah takes you through it, and then there's a journey and a path that you have to follow. It was beautiful. And then essentials to us, your question. Sorry, I can
No,
talk about it for
I
hours.
love the direction it went in, so it's fine.
Everyone said the cooling tower. I didn't really think up until Mina, I didn't think the cooling tower was necessary to get
Okay.
them up back. When you get to Mina camps, and it's like nothing you prepared for. It's really hot. There's lots of personalities. You already know these personalities because they're your friends because you met them
Right.
in your Azizia. But I wasn't prepared for it mentally. And then I had a friend who pulled out her cooling towel and she poured ice water from her little cooling bottle.
Okay.
And that that feeling of that ice towel on you in that heat, as much as it sounds so silly, that was a memory that it's gonna stay with me
Wow.
because that was kind of like another blessing. The people you meet along the way, the people that came into your life even before you leave for Hajj, to say, I'm gonna be there to help you. I had a cousin who's an engineer, and when she heard I'm leaving for Hajj, just 2.5 weeks before I had to leave, she said, no, hold on, I'm gonna come to you. I said, but how? She paused her life and said, I'm gonna come to you. And the blessings, these people are blessings. These are your blessings. So when Allah invites you, don't be anxious. He will provide and He will make sure everything you're supposed to gain from that journey, if you go with an open, positive perspective, you will gain it.
So much to talk about. So much to talk about Hajj. But we're definitely going to have a part 2 with you, I think. We're going to have a follow up, this time with the husband. So we're going to extend that invitation to you. And I'm sure either Zahir or myself or one of the other shows are going to do something like that in more like a series.
Yeah.
And I think it offers a lot of insight into the behind the scenes of Hajj that people often maybe don't talk about. And yeah, I think these cooling towels are the coolest things that have been invented these days. Eh? Fantastic. I see so many people saying that that's an essential to carry on. And some of them, I believe, you can twist it and it gets colder. I don't know. I think it's something like that.
But yeah.
And now the wudu spraying thing that everyone is carrying.
Yeah.
So there's so many different things. But Jazakallah khair so much for speaking to us. May Allah accept all your ibadah, your hajj, and those that are gone there now as well, and make dua for the rest of us as well, that we get to experience too with our partners. A little bit more than 2 weeks notice, but inshallah.
But don't stress, even if it is only 2 weeks, it will.
When it's meant, it's meant.
Honestly. Right. Thank you for having me.
No, Jazakallah for being here, for taking the time out and speaking to us this afternoon. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I wish we could speak more, but definitely we will follow up on this. Inshallah. Jazakallah. No,
Thank you.
Let us know, Jahan Khan. Straight after this, we're going to talk all things about travel, but not from a traveler's perspective, from an air hostess. Don't miss it.
Getting Radio Uninspired. Looking to book your next holiday? Make your way to One Stop Travel and Tours. At One Stop Travel, we offer a wide range of holidays at the most competitive prices.
hearts and make us feel how we so real with you.
It's just after 3:30. That is the voice of Ramzan Days, probably one of Ted's favorite artists. That's like his go-to when he feels for a mood uplifter, a mood booster. He goes for Ramzan Days. If you wish to send any messages, you're welcome to do so. 060-904-1056. This is the moment I've been waiting for the longest time. Not that the Hajj wasn't. That is amazing, and that needs a whole show on its own. Thank you so much to Noor Jahan, and we hope to have a follow-up chat with her. There's so much to talk about as we getting closer to the time of Hajj, but with so much of attention on airlines these days, you kind of wonder the unsung heroes that are really there behind chicken or beef all the time, or tea or coffee, and the amount of strain or the amount of work that goes behind that role of being an air hostess or an international cabin crew member. I'm thrilled to actually have someone who's been doing it for the past 2 years, and we follow her journey very, very closely, because one minute she's modeling abayas, but the next minute she's now joining one of the most esteemed airlines in the world. And we welcome Amara to Radio Al Ansar Studios. Welcome. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to have you in studio as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making the time to speak to us. When I saw that you're making a stop in Durban, I said, okay, this is the opportunity for us to talk and get to know a little bit. And it so happened that airlines are making the news these days, and they are talking about what's happening. So you cannot help but ask questions. And I said, I'm getting Amara in today, so I have to ask her thoughts on all of these things that we're seeing in the news as well. But firstly, let's get started right at the beginning. The most frequently asked questions, I'm assuming, the most commonly asked questions. So how do you end up becoming a cabin crew member? Do you need a degree? Maybe you get people that just want to travel and explore. And I had friends that were in varsity that just said they just want to be a travel agent for a year. I mean, a cabin crew member, an air hostess, just to be able to travel. So is it that easy to actually get into? Tell us some of the requirements to get into the career itself.
Yeah, sure. So I do international air hosting. I work for the company Emirates Airlines. In terms of local air hosting, you would have to do a degree within South Africa, because the aviation licenses would be required just for South Africa only. And if you don't have a degree in air hosting or anything related to aviation, that's completely fine. I come from a background with zero knowledge. I literally came with nothing. And then I moved to Dubai, and the company brought me over, and they trained me, and they will train you same as if you were for Etihad or Qatar. The company employs you, and they bring you over, and you go through an intensive training course. For example, mine was 8 weeks, so just like 2 months. And when I say I came with no experience, I had no idea what it was. And it was an industry that I always wanted to get into. So if there's anyone out there that would like to apply, if you're nervous because you're scared of flying, I would say I was the same, but you brace yourself for exciting opportunities that it brings over. For example, if you want to be with Emirates, they're mass employing right now. I mean, we've been looking for cabin crew for the past 2 years since COVID. Honestly, just go on their website, onto the careers, Emirates, and it's such an easy step to apply. It's honestly nothing complicated. The only thing you would need is your matric certificate and 1 year of customer service. Yeah.
You were going to say community service.
Community service.
Community service would be good too, but
yeah.
Either way. So let's talk about in general, once you are, and I have a friend that works for the same airlines as well. So I know that training that she used to undergo, and I know you're not allowed to take pictures, but occasionally she would sneak a picture in just to show me, like, look at this airline on the pool and what they had to do and the amount of training you had to go through. So take us through that. When you see these emergencies, you see what happened with Singapore Airlines now as well, these types of scenarios that are happening it's quite admirable when you see all those cross checks and this checks and that checks, and it looks all fancy. And I have a 7-year-old that does that now whenever she sees something along those lines. And I always pictured myself as a cabin crew member walking down, pushing my cart of food. But it's not all about that.
Not all about that.
There's a lot that goes into the training itself. Take us through the training that you guys have to go through.
Okay, so to start off with, we get trained for safety, medical, and the last step is the chicken and beef. That comes at the end of everything. So we have 2 weeks of safety training that entails, turbulence, how to handle oxygen on board, how to handle severe turbulence like what just happened yesterday with Singapore Airlines. So in terms of when it comes to air hosting, I would really when I tell people that as much as I always wanted to do this job, it's something that you really have to put your mind to. It's something that comes with a lot of hard work. I think we make it glamorized because we're going everywhere, but before you get to your destination and I take all my pictures, it's a journey that it takes for me to get there. You know, we wake up from it's an industry that's running 24/7. We don't we're not sleeping, you know? So, you'd be waking up for work at 3 a.m. to only disembark by 7 a.m. from the airport. And then you have a 10-hour shift after that. And then you land and then you have all this adrenaline in you and you want to go out. So I always say it's a lot of hard work to make the job look the way it does. Yeah. For example, then we have safety. So that was the safety that we've covered. And then you get your medical cases. So we would learn how to do CPR, how to manage different, illnesses and sicknesses. So you get qualified as a first aid response after your training as well. So, if anything just happens in general outside of your job, and if you are the first person there, you can help. And then we have, I think it's a week after, in the last week of our training, we do the service training, and that's to do with hospitality. And for those who fly with Emirates, and if you understand why it's one of the best airlines in the world, you'll understand through the training for those that are cabin crew how intense it is. I feel like I've become so hyper aware of hospitality now when I'm on holiday or when I'm outside of my job, of how people speak to service workers and how they are. I expect perfection from everyone else because I'm taught to do the same. So it's really made me a perfectionist, that's for sure. But I feel like it's, as much as it's a hardworking job, I've always been particular about just things in general in my life. So I always say, if I can do it, I think anyone can put their mind to do it. Yeah.
But I think that's important. I think it's something that that people need to consider. Also, like you mentioned, it makes you more conscious of how you speak to the next person and how considerate you may be as well. And this is what I mentioned to you as well. Also, is you get in the hospitality industry a certain level of tolerance that you then have to have, a certain level of patience. So in an emergency situation now, for example, how do you now prevent that from taking or making you panic? Do you ever find cabin crew panicking at any point, or you just have to maintain this composure, even though that plane is shaking like crazy? What do you then have to do in those type of scenarios?
So with Emirates, for example, we fly on the 777, 300 and 200, and we have a 380, which is the double decker. We've got simulators that are literal aircrafts in our training college, and those simulators, as if you were on a roller coaster going up and down, and they physically will put us inside, and that's part of our safety training. And then it moves and it shows us, it shakes as if what would happen when it would have a real scenario, how you would deal with giving oxygen, or when you're having a decompression and literally everything is just flying down, how would you deal with that? So for me, I've had my fair share of bad turbulence, but I think because we've been trained for it, I've subconsciously told myself, you'll be fine. I know, and it took a long time to get there, because I can be doing my cart and we'd have turbulence, and then what do I do from there? I have to take care of, my responsibility is to take care of passengers before I take care of myself. But I think when you remind yourself you've been trained for everything, you have to trust your gut that you know what you will do when something has to happen. Alhamdulillah, I've not experienced anything so severe. But yeah.
What have been some of the most exciting moments on a flight for you, if you can remember?
Exciting, or
exciting in a turbulence or a dramatic sort of sense where those things drop from the something or the other?
So I've not had anything in terms of falling, but I did have when I flew from Dubai to Pakistan. I think we were doing Karachi, and we had something very similar in terms of where a plane drops. You're going through an air pocket. Yeah, so you can't really predict that. A pilot won't have any knowledge on that. It's not a forecasted weather. So we're about to go in with our carts, and it's a full flight, and it's a very it's a flight that takes a lot out of you physically, because it's a very short flight as well. And those flights are always overbooked. So it requires a lot out of you emotionally, physically. And I was coming out with my cart, and all of a sudden the plane shakes a bit. And I'm like, okay, so we're not going to carry on with the service and start. So we'll put our carts back in. And then we're standing in our kitchen, which we call a galley in aviation terms. Okay. So I'm standing in the galley, and all of a sudden we have this drop, but it was like a blip in a sense where it felt like a second, but seconds feel like forever when you're experiencing what you are. And then we all suddenly just our legs lifted off the ground, and whatever was there, it just like went flying into the ceiling, like the cans, or like if we had food around, just went up. And then, it wasn't like, it's not as serious as what you think it is, but because we don't experience situations like this, anything for a cabin crew is like, whoa, okay, so now I'm seeing everything that I'm trained for. But nothing too severe. For us, it's like, okay, it's just a little blip, it's fine.
Now, for Singapore Airlines, it was exactly what you're saying, an air pocket.
No. So this was an air pocket. This was actually a weather storm that was surrounding Myanmar, if I'm not mistaken. There was a storm that was around that area, and I think they were trying to divert around.
And they said also it dropped so many feet in 5 minutes.
1,800 meters in 3 minutes. It dropped down, which is crazy. I don't know what I would do.
Because you somehow think, how does turbulence cause a person to die or things like that? But then when they explain how many meters it actually dropped in that amount of time, they say you can't imagine the force that must have been.
The force that's going against you versus, and then you see the pictures of the oxygen mask all flying down. So obviously you're going against your breathing rate versus what's happening. So I always encourage people who fly often, or even if you fly like for the first time in your life, I encourage you to watch the safety video. Be aware of your surroundings. We forget that we're not just in a car, you're literally in the air, and like the oxygen that's in this like vessel that you're going is just trying to mimic the oxygen that you would be breathing outside when you're on ground. So always be aware, and always wear your seatbelt, even when you feel like you don't need to wear your seatbelt. Wear it as long as you need to. When you go up to the toilet, come back, put your seatbelt on. Things can happen in a split second, and you never know what can happen. So
that's true. You'd rather just keep it on.
Yes.
But okay, let's shift into a little bit. With any career, there are always these challenges. There's always in any field or career. And in this, we spoke about it being in the hospitality industry as well, serving somebody or being at their disposal. And a lot of people, it comes with its challenges in that aspect. And there's enough videos on YouTube or social media that always get shared. India Airlines tackles this passenger gets handcuffed, when you'll see those little cable ties getting tied around their arms, and some very tense situations, volatile situations, maybe a fight breaking out or something or the other, or maybe just a really demanding passenger that's on the flight. How are you then able to handle those scenarios, or what would your advice be to passengers to be more mindful of when they're traveling?
So in terms of, from my experience, from a cabin crew's point of view, I think we learn to build a lot of patience. But beforehand, I feel like before you even apply for this job, you need to do some introspect and ask yourself, is this for me? I'm going to be dealing with people every day. I'm meeting new colleagues every day. You don't fly with the same people ever. You're literally flying with new people every flight. You're meeting new people every day. You're meeting passengers that you've never spoken to before, and you need to give them a service that they require because they've paid thousands for their tickets to travel from A to B. So you have to keep in mind that you're meeting people that are traveling for various reasons. We have passengers that are flying to weddings, going to funerals, they're going to holidays, they're going on honeymoons, and you're here standing on your own and you're trying to provide a service. And you also have to keep in mind that other people are also expecting an emotional support from you. You'll have people that are crying on board because they found out news and they turn to you, and you have to somewhat bring it out of you, but it has to come naturally from you. So I feel like having empathy, showing empathy, sympathizing with people is something that you really have to take into consideration when you apply for this job. It will take everything out of you mentally when you're faced with a challenge, whereas flights can be very demanding. For example, we have turnaround flights, so we just travel to the destination and we come back the same day.
Wow.
Those are like to Pakistan, India, Maldives, Istanbul. We go and come back, and that's like almost like, like a 13-hour shift, and you're going, coming back. And like I said, like those flights are usually very full flights. Those are people that generally work in the UAE. So, they're always constantly full. And you will have your fair share of people maybe losing their patience with you, but it's how you respond to them that makes them feel calm, because you might find like someone speaking to you rudely, but it's how you respond and approach the situation that will change their outcome or their response, and they'll still leave happy and satisfied, even though maybe they didn't feel happy whilst they were boarding, or maybe something happened at the boarding gate and then they take it out on you. So you have to be mindful of how you speak, how you talk. You're in your uniform, you're representing a global company, you're representing not just yourself, you're you're like representing people that are paying thousands, so you got to like take so much into consideration. But like I said, if you approach it in a calm manner, you keep in mind that they are speaking out of what they've experienced. You're able to figure out why people are the way they are. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You
It's
have
like
to
a
be a people's
counselor's
person.
job.
Honestly,
So much of introspect. I'm surprised you don't need a psychology degree to do this sort of work. Is there ever like an off day where sometimes if you say perhaps you catch a cold or you just don't feel like it or you just feel lazy, is there a chance where you could just say, I don't want to fly today? Is that possible?
No. When you work for an airline, when you work for an international airline, no, those are not days that you can figure out.
You just
like,
gotta
go. You get a roster once a month that you'll be able to foresee what you're flying for the next month. No, if you don't feel like that doesn't exist. You have to come to work.
Even if you have an off day, even if you're not feeling nice, you just have to put that smile on.
Days. Yeah, that's what I always say. The Emirates smile with the red lipstick, that's what carries us. But no, you know what? As a cabin crew, you have to take care of your health as well. I always say your health is your wealth. You really realize that when you work for a company or an industry that's like I said, it doesn't sleep. You're on the go 24/7. And you have to take care of yourself emotionally. Your health has to be there. You have to physically be there. You have to be present in everything that you're doing. Obviously, you can't come to work if you're not feeling well. So you have to monitor why are you feeling the way that you are. Like obviously, we work for a company that takes care of us very well. If we're not feeling well, we have people to speak to. In terms of
so do you take like extra vitamins and things like that?
I have always I've always been that person, but I've now done a bit more since moving. It's also very stressful on our bodies. We don't have a sleep schedule, but it's something that your body adjusts to. Like I don't know how to take naps, and that's like it sounds very strange to think, because I fly with people where they'll say I have to take like a 2-hour power nap before work, and I'm like, I can't do that. Like I'm waking up, I'm going out, and then
you may miss a flight.
I will get ready, and then I will go on board, do the work, and we land in Dubai, and then I'll go to sleep afterwards. Yeah.
Fantastic. So take us through some of the places that you've been, maybe like if you had to make like a top 10, let's to go through your top 10 destinations.
Yeah. So definitely New York. Oh my gosh, you can't get tired of New York. I have that coming up at the end of next month. I will always love that place. It's exactly how the movies portray it to be.
So you already know where you're going next month?
Yes. So once a month you get told, like we have a specific date, and then you'll be able to see where your next month and its full roster will be. Yeah, your off days, whatever is partaking in that month, you'll know everything beforehand.
Okay, so we got New York.
New York, Casablanca in Morocco.
Oh, wow.
The culture there. I love going to places that are immersed in their culture, because we're we have a diverse culture in South Africa, and then you come out of it and then you try to find places that allow you to feel like, you're part of them. And I love doing that, because when I go on my trips, I don't like to take a taxi or an Uber. I love walking. Sometimes we do stay a bit far out of the city, but when you get into the city and you walk around everywhere, oh my word, it's the best.
And how much time do you spend more or less in each place?
So on average, everywhere is 24 hours.
Wow.
But if we're going to America and Australia and Far East Asia, it's roughly around like 48, 39 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone to New York, we've gone to Morocco.
Australia, New Zealand. Oh my gosh, those are like, as much as it sounds so far away, it makes me feel like I'm in South Africa when I'm in Australia.
They say that about Australia.
I understand why a lot of people immigrate, like South Africans immigrate to Australia and New Zealand, because like the street grid layout looks the same. The way people just like move around on their day-to-day life literally looks like you're like in Durban. Like there's some places I will be like, okay, this reminds me of like Musgrave, or like this would remind me of Overport. And I always try
Overport.
No, like I'm being so serious. Like there's some places where I always like bring back the memory of like, this is how it would look at home.
Okay.
Yeah. But it allows me to just experience it in my own way.
Awesome.
And then I love Paris. Oh my God. I have it a few times next month. I'm so excited. I've been there so many times, and it will always be my favorite place. Where else? There's like There's so many.
The fact that those ones just came straight off, you didn't even have to think about that. I don't even think we have to count a top 10, but like you've got Australia, New Zealand, Casablanca, Morocco. I want to ask you a fun rapid fire before we actually, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. So before we run out of time. So there's a few things I wanted to ask you. And these are things generally I always see when you've done your Instagram lives or when people have asked you questions as well. So if a person were to ask you, what are things not to say or ask from a flight attendant?
Well, not to say that we're a glamorized waitress, because we're trained in safety and medical, and we're there to look after you, and your safety is our concern before anything else. Yeah.
Perfect. Because you could end up saving a life too at the end of the day as well. So you're a flight attendant when you do what? What do you do subconsciously?
When you don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what day of the week it is ever. Like, don't ask me the day of the week. Ask me the date. I'll tell you the date, but I don't know the day of the week.
The day that it is. Okay. What is the first thing that you do when you get on a flight?
So as soon as I get on board, I have to change my shoes. So when we walk outside, before we get onto the aircraft, we wear high heels in the airport or like when we're outside the aircraft. And then as soon as we get on board, we don't wear our high heels.
Pumps,
we wear our pumps. So they're called cabin shoes. So those are the shoes that we'll do when we're serving and everything. So yeah, change my
I
shoes.
always wanted to know, funny question though, but it's a genuine concern of mine. They say in emergencies, you mustn't carry your bags, you mustn't carry your shoes. So what happens to all your things? You must just leave it and go.
Unfortunately,
do you ever find people saying no, but I want my bag? What if you want your phone or you need the nappy bag or something?
So
then what?
We have emergency exits that's next to each door, and then we have a bulkhead seat which will be in the middle. I don't know if you're recalling from like when you're traveling on Emirates, we've got like a bulkhead seats where you have families that are sitting, and then you have like a baby.
Yes.
So in those seats, we don't allow loose items for takeoff and landing.
Okay.
So I always try to explain to them first why, instead of just telling them, can you please put it up? Because people want to know why, and people always need to know why before doing things. So it's nice to inform people before hitting them straight with an answer like, you need to do this or you need to do that, because people need to be informed so they can understand, well, if something happens, then things are going to fall, or you can get caught on your bag, or your heels will hurt you and this will happen. So people need to understand before things.
I'm one of those typical ones that'll shove everything underneath the seat and I'll hide from the cabin crews when you see them. What's the first thought? Are you afraid of seeing babies on a plane?
No, I love children. I just saw your son outside and I was like, oh, I love kids, and having working this job, I feel like when I see babies come on board, the first thing I try to do is, okay, let me try and see how I can make this mom or this dad or this family comfortable, because people are traveling, like I said, for various reasons, and then they have a child, which is now an added responsibility for them, and sometimes parents can't even like help their own child on board. Some are crying and the parents don't know the reason why, and then the child will see us and all of a sudden they keep quiet. So sometimes you'll be holding a child like in our galley and we're just sitting there and we're trying to keep them occupied. But if a mom can sleep for at least 15 minutes, that's like bliss for them. So honestly, the first thing that we'll try and do is try to make the families
comfortable. That's lovely. Now, you mentioned you guys don't sleep much, but if you were really hungry, what would be your meal, your go-to meal if you need to hop before a next flight? Maybe you are hungry. What would you eat?
So for me personally, I love a good chicken Caesar salad. That's like my good carry-on. But on board, we have food that's catered just for the cabin crew as well. And we're allowed to eat the passengers' food when there's like extra available. But we do have cabin crew food available to us. If you have dietary requirements, it's catered to you as well. But I also, just to let like everyone know, in terms of like, as much as I say we have a busy schedule, we get a lot of off days. So you're working half the month, you're off half the month, but it's intertwined in between your flights. So on my off days, I'm enjoying living my life in Dubai, and it's such oh my word, I think the biggest thing for me is just, taking in how safe it is for women to be on their own and do whatever they want to do. I think that's one thing I've enjoyed living away from home, is just having to relax and not, look over my shoulder for everything. So, trying to live a separate life apart from your job is easy. I think it's how you look at your job. Like it can make you, or it can, I would say it can make you or it can break you. But I feel like if I can do it, I think anyone can do it. Yeah. I say this because I'm a very fussy person. My mom will say this.
But now that you're back home,
Yeah.
what's some of the first things that you do the moment you get back home? The fact that you landed in Durban, was it going for a cup of coffee at your favorite restaurant, or was it just sleeping for a couple of hours? What were some of the first things that you did when you got home?
So every time when I land, my mom will do this thing where, and I love her for this, but I'm always so tired. But I love the fact that whenever I land, we go straight for dinner with our family. And then
Wow.
I'll come home, I'll sleep. And I have 2 cats here in Durban, which I miss so dearly. So I'll always spend time with them. And I always do this tradition of I bring so many toys and gifts for my cats. So they will always be playing. And it makes me so happy because I'm always like FaceTiming my mum and I'm trying to like see what they're getting up to. And then my nanny, I will always give her like a food list of like what I would like to prepare. Like I miss my dal and rice, my chicken curry and my acne. And I'm always
There's
like,
the menu
this
for
is
the
what
week.
I need
Yeah.
when I land, please.
Amazing. Amara, it's been so wonderful
Thank
talking
you
to
so
you.
much.
And we hope, inshallah, that we're able to do this again one day and just talk
Yes,
about this
definitely.
amazing career. It's such a fascinating field to be in, so widely traveled. But thank you so much for making the time out to speak to us. It's been incredibly informative. Thank you
Shukran.
so
Thank
much.
you so much.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum.
Also must mention the very famous Miss Ma Asmal that we always knew, Radio Al Ansar
Aw.
stalwart. What was your
That was
great-grandmother?
my great grandmother. I'd
Oh.
love to dedicate this little segment to her. I know she'd be so proud of
She
me.
definitely would. She
Yeah.
always called into every one of my
I
programs.
know.
So may Allah raise her abode in Jannah, inshallah, grant her the highest abode in Jannah. Thank you so
Amen.
much, Amara. I'm going to pack my things now because I've got some sheep to check out. I'm going to grab my kids and we're going to go live after the news, and after the Asr break, I'll be speaking to you where we're going to go check out the continental livestock that's just arrived at Al Ansar straight after this.
Radio Al Ansar. An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news that 4DA leader John Steenhuisen